Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am Jocelyn Turner, as you saw from the introduction. We're so happy that you are joining us tonight. Tonight is going to be quite special. We have three special guests, and one is joining me as co host. And you may remember him because he was on previously as a guest. So apparently, he inspired us so much that I gave him a call and said, Corey, will you join me as co host tonight while Dr. Kane is taking the evening off? How are you doing, Corey?
Doing good. Good evening, everybody.
Can you share a little bit with our guests? Just tell them a little bit, just real quickly, of your background.
As Jocelyn stated, my name is Corey O'Neill. I'm the program coordinator for the anti-gang prevention program called Inspire here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I work closely with Jacksonville Sheriff Office, and we work with youth that are at risk of joining a gang, youth that are in a gang, youth that may be persons of interest in a gang, and we offer services to help them turn their lives around or to make better and healthier decisions. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Florida A&M, and I've been in the human services and nonprofit sector for about 18 years.
Thank you, Corey. So as you can see, Corey has a lot to share, and I love those rattlers. They always like to, I'm surprised I didn't get the strike from you. Did I do it right? Did I do it right? Well, sorry, right? I am a gator. But on a serious note, we have a serious topic to talk about tonight and have, quite honestly, two very distinguishing guests. They may not consider themselves that, but I do because these gentlemen are movers and shakers in our community. They're really just trying to help folks. I'm going to start with last week's guest who thought that we obviously had something good going on because when I gave him a call and say, hey, will you come back? He immediately said yes, and that is attorney A. Wellington Barlow. How are you doing this evening, Attorney
I'm
Barlow?
I'm very blessed and honored that you would think enough about me to have me back on your show again. So thanks a million for that.
Listen, we go way back, as I shared before with our guests, and I know that you have, through your pastoral work and your work as an attorney, and just all the other things that you've been active in, that you are very passionate about making a difference in our community. So welcome back. We're also happy to have attorney Dexter Van Davis. How are you doing this evening, Attorney Davis?
I'm doing well, and thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So although I just said your name, I would like for you to just give a little quick background. And I'm going to start with you, Attorney Davis, because after that, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Barlow because he had some slides he'd like to share with us. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Attorney Davis.
Well, I just consider myself a country boy from Alabama, like I was telling Tyrone earlier. I moved here in 1990 after I got out of the military. Went to the University of Florida, go Gators, although I'm a Roll Tide fan when it comes to football. But I joined the state attorney's office in 1997 as a prosecutor, worked there for 2 years. City of Jacksonville, worked there for 18 months, and I've been in private practice now since 2000. My practice consists of criminal defense work and personal injury. And this year makes 25 years I've been practicing law. I have a private law firm here in Jacksonville, Davis Law Group, where we consider ourselves dedicated to demanding justice. And that's what we try to do each and every day.
Thank you. It was very timely with what we're talking about tonight, which I failed to say that nobody caught me on it. But tonight's topic is equal justice in criminal sentencing. So you can see that our panel are the right experts for subject matter experts for this. I'm now going to turn it over to Attorney Barlow, who will tell you a little bit about himself, and then he's going to share some information, and then we'll come back with the discussion. Take it away, Attorney Barlow.
Yeah, Alvin Wellington Barlow Sr. is my name. I was born here in 1961 in the separate but equal hospital, was called Brewster back then. Went to my mother's daycare. She ran a daycare for 40 years. Went to Carter G. Woodson. Matter of fact, it was integration happened in the 6th grade when I was there. Went to Northwestern, then Raines. Came out of Raines with honors in 79. Went to the University of Florida the next week after graduating that summer. And I got a degree in political science in 83, a law degree in 85. I did an internship in the state attorney office in the summer of 85. After graduating in December of 85, I worked at the public defender's office here in Jacksonville for about 2 years. And then I came out into private practice in, I think, about 1988 or so. And I've been practicing law for 36 years. We're talking about equity in sentencing, equitable sentencing, or equal justice in sentencing. And the first thing I want to say is that even if a person's guilty and they're going to be punished, that punishment is supposed to be equitable. So this is not a show about trying to get people off the hook or anything like that. What it is about is equal justice for people who are similarly situated. So there are two components to this. You're talking about equity in sentencing and proportionality. And proportionality is this right here. It means that a person is not excessively sentenced for the crime with which they've been charged. And as you're going to see with the data that I'm going to pull up, sometimes there's some serious charges, yet there are certain people who get lighter, much lighter sentences than other people who get heavier sentences for the exact same charges with the exact same penalty. So I am I'm a partner in a company called Technologies for Justice, and we created revolutionary software that's being used all over the state of Florida right now. Florida has 20 judicial circuits, and so we have private attorneys using this software to foster equitable sentences for their clients. In all 20 circuits, we have several public defenders around Florida, and one state attorney is considering it right now. It came into existence in 2018, so we've been running it since then. So what is ESAS, or Equity and Sentencing Analysis? It's inquiry, reporting, and statistical analysis software, web-based software that can quickly analyze, compare, and contrast sentencing data as follows: statutory charges, score sheet points, offense date, sentence type, sentence date, sentencing judge, minimum maximum sentencing range, defendant's name, race, gender, date of birth, defendant's age at sentencing, which is a new feature that we just programmed in last year, case or docket number. He says reformats existing criminal history data to craft equitable sentences by comparing and contrasting prior sentences. That's the analysis portion of it, of similarly situated persons. This exercise is performed at a mouse click with results in a few seconds, depending on one's internet speed. So here are the column definitions for the data that we generate. The statute number, a short description, you'll see that in a minute. Offense level, the CPC, which means Criminal Punishment Code points. The Criminal Punishment Code was instituted in October 1st, 1998, and it is a law that basically requires sentences to be proportional and equitable. Yet that is not the case because there was no system that was created to audit that system, but that's what ESAS does. So sentencing type, SP stands for state prison, CJ county jail, CC community control. Community control is home detention. That's another word. This is the formal word for house arrest or home detention, phrase that is. PB is probation, TS time served. Reinstate supervision, that means a person was on probation or community control or house arrest. They got violated, but the judge put them back on supervision as opposed to sentencing them to jail or prison. Other type of sentences, if it's a unique one, sentencing years, minimum sentence, maximum sentence, disposition type, plea, trial. If there's an NS, that means that the prosecutor did not put plea or trial in the appropriate box. So the Florida Department of Corrections put this in there, which means not specified. Mandatory minimum sentences, case or docket number, last name of the defendant, first name, race, sex, date of birth, age, at sentencing, judge's name, sentencing date, offense date. Here is the dynamics of a case that a public defender in Tallahassee, that's the Second Judicial Circuit, used our system to effectuate a very equitable sentence. So here are the dynamics of it, and you'll hear her describe what happened in the case, if it'll play.
Now we have Ms. Johnson, who's here, hopefully from the Public Defender's Office, Second Judicial Circuit, to describe her case. I'll just give you the dynamics of it right here. It was just resolved, and she can give you more information about it. Are you on line with us?
Yes, Mr. Barlow, I'm here.
All right, good. If you don't mind, just kind of give us the dynamic of the case, you know, what was happening before you all got ESAS, and then what happened after. You know, what were your negotiations before and after?
Yes, and this was a violation of probation. The allegations were that my client tested positive for marijuana. The negotiations, of course, the statutory maximum is 60 months in the Department of Correction, but based on his criminal history, the Criminal Punishment Code, which dated back to the 90s, he actually scored 66.3 months. And the state attorney's offer was 48 months in the Department of Correction. And she was adamant, she was not changing her mind on it. I had asked for 1129, asked for 18 months, and she was adamant. So we ran the data from ESAS, and we were able to find 4 cases in our area. I used 2 of those cases that were very similar to my client's situation, and received sentences that were either a lot less than what they scored, or no prison time at all. And just to kind of show you how it worked, I got the data on March the 26th. I sent the information to the state attorney on March the 13th. Center had to send her a reminder on May the 23rd, and on April the 23rd, and then on April the 26th, she agreed to 9 months of county jail. And this was after her being strongly objecting to anything other than 4 years. My client entered his plea on May the 10th. He received 9 months jail, 270 days jail with credit of 15 days served. So what this did, and she was a younger prosecutor, and I think what this information helped her see was that there are other prosecutors in the circuit that have been able to go below the guidelines for a significant amount based on similar circumstances. So I don't think without the data, she would have been able to see that. I was pulling the data because I was preparing for an open plea, and unfortunately, the prosecutor was able to give an offer, which is very favorable to my client.
Excellent. And if I remember correctly, I think somebody told me that somebody might have been a little skeptical about this system before they used it. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct, Mr. Barlow. I'll be the first to admit. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Barlow. He did a presentation in our office pre-COVID, and I was skeptical about using it. I'm used to just reaching out to the attorneys in the office or members in facto to try and get information. And so I didn't know how this was going to work, and I'm glad that I was wrong. This is one of those situations where I'm glad I was wrong. So you're absolutely right, Mr. Barlow.
The guy had a lot of credit time already in, so he didn't even serve that 9 months. And so there's an ABA, or American Bar Association criminal justice standard, which requires defense attorneys to know, and before they sentence anyone, they should have information concerning the court's practices in exercising sentencing discretion, the collateral consequences of different sentences. And so there's a requirement that we know what the normal patterns of sentences are for the offenses that our clients are charged with. A lot of lawyers don't know that, so I kind of inform them of it when I do continuing legal education seminars. And so this particular attorney went over that data with her client, which satisfied the American Bar Association standards. So what our software did was, she unwittingly satisfied a bar requirement or standard from the American Bar Association. So I asked her
Did you
about
go over
that.
the data with your client?
I did. I went over the data with him because, like I said, we were planning on. I thought we were going to have to use it as an open plea. So we did discuss it, and like we were looking at him going to prison for anything less than 4 years.
Okay.
But we did go over it, and it was helpful for him to understand what we were looking for.
Okay. And was he going to give you authorization to enter that open plea if y'all had not resolved it by plea bargain?
Yes, he was.
Do you think that that data helped him make that decision?
I think it did. Yeah, I definitely think it did, because you look at the score sheet, and he scored more than the statutory maximum. And I think that's something that helped him see that there's a chance that I may not get, a significant amount of prison time.
Formally endorsed by the Florida Bar and the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers with respective discounts for each organization. That attorney mentioned that she would normally get information from FACTO, Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. That's FACTO. And so I'm almost done. I just want to show you a couple more things. This is the entrance, how you get into ESAS. Once you have login credentials, you put your username here, your password. It'll let you in the system, and you acknowledge that the Equity and Sentencing Analysis System is a research and reporting tool. The data is derived from public records and is not an official record. The accuracy of the data can be verified by the clerks of court for the respective county that generated the case numbers. The clerk's offices send their data to DOC, that's Florida Department of Corrections, every week. We get it once a year on a fiscal basis. So once you click on here that you've acknowledged the data, then you come into the system. You have a search screen here, which has offense level, offense date, sentence date. You have the circuits here. We're in Duval, which is the 4th Judicial Circuit. I ran 794-011, which is a sexual battery case, 154 points to 154 points. And I came up with these cases right here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you something. This is a second-degree felony, which carries up to 15 years in prison. So the minimum is 7.9 to 8 years, or maximum is 15 years. As you can see on this right here, there are sentences are wildly divergent. Here's a person who got county jail. That's 6 months county jail, 1 year county jail, 2.5 years state prison, 4 years probation, all the way down to the last one. This person got 15 years in prison. So as you can see, these are not equitable sentences, because there's one person got 15 years in prison. There's another person that got 6 months in jail on a plea bargain on this case, on a trial on this particular case. I'm almost done. And here are the pleas only. Here are plea bargains, 6 months in the county jail to 10 years state prison. Those are divergent sentences. Those are not equitable sentences down here when you get down here compared to these.
Before you leave, I'm sorry, will you go back to that? Because I do want to interject a question with that. When you talk about equity, I'm looking at the column where it gives the race of the individual. So is the inequity based on race, gender, or both?
It's based on both, to be honest with you. One of the things I find, and I'll just say this right here, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but I call balls and strikes. The real prejudice and discrimination and disparate treatment happens to poor people. It just so happens that many of the poor are African American, but I see just as many poor whites hurt by this system as African Americans. When you have the funds to hire good lawyers like Dexter Davis, irrespective of your race, you're going to get a good deal. But if you don't have the kind of funds to hire quality attorneys, high-powered attorneys, experienced attorneys, 9 times out of 10, your sentence is going to be a lot worse. Now, within that category of poor people, poor African Americans are going to receive even worse sentences than poor whites. So it cuts across all lines, but primarily the primary factor is finances and economics. That's the main one. But in general, yes, African Americans receive higher sentences than whites on average. But poor whites and poor blacks receive disparate sentences as well.
Is
So
this
here,
system only used by attorneys? Like I couldn't look it up if I were.
right. This system can only be operated by attorneys. Now, what you can do, let's say you have a loved one who's arrested, you can pay for this system yourself, and we turn the data over to your lawyer. Some lawyers collect the fee for the data and pay it through their trust account. Some lawyers just have me to send the bill directly to the client or family member, and they pay for it, and then I transfer the data to the lawyer, and or sometimes I have to mail it to a prisoner or whatever. So a layperson can pay for the service to be used, but only lawyers can actually operate the system, like I've done to get these slides right here. So here are trial cases right here. I just want to show you, I'm almost done. Here's the difference. These are plea bargain sentences over here. These are trial sentences over here. Okay, so you see the minimum sentence here is 6 months in jail, 0.05 is 6 months in jail. The minimum sentence on a plea. The minimum sentence on a trial is 7.9 years. The maximum sentence on a plea is 10 years. The maximum sentence on a trial is 15 years. The average sentence on a plea bargain is 3.3 years. The average sentence on the trial is 9.72 years, almost 10 years. And so the median sentence, which is the midpoint, is 2 years for pleas and 8 years for trials, which means there's what we call a trial penalty, meaning if you go to trial 9 times out of 10, you're going to get hurt. So this is my contact information, and I'm done with the presentation. I'm ready to move to the next phase of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting. And, I had to enlarge my screen because I wanted to see when we talk about equal justice in sentencing, I really want to know, is it by race? Is it also by gender? Because last week when we were talking about homelessness, for example, we were talking about the person, our guest said that the most people who were homeless were African-American males, right? And so we're seeing from one show to the other, when we're talking about disparities, that disparities seem to be across the board for African-American males. Attorney Davis, Attorney Barlow said that when they get high-powered attorneys like yourself, I just wanted to make sure I slid that in. So when you are contacted, do you find that you've had to fight harder? And this might be the wrong way to ask the question, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just a health educator. Do you find that it's harder for you to plead your case for your clients if they are African American versus if they are Caucasian, for example, in terms of equity in sentencing?
My experience, yes, fight like hell for African Americans versus Caucasians. I've had both clients. Caucasians, for some reason, they don't feel they belong in jail or prison. I had one instance. This one a white male, he had been arrested for selling cocaine. And usually a sale of cocaine will get you at least 6 months in jail, at least. And it's probably been 5, 6 years ago. But he was adamant about not wanting to go to jail. I had never experienced anyone, if you've been caught red-handed selling cocaine, that you didn't get some jail time. Well, this kid was adamant about not doing any jail time. And of course, with a white prosecutor and a white judge, and we put on an argument, and surely enough, he got probation. And that was the first time I ever saw that done. And then I started using it with my African-American clients, showing what they've done with this one. And yet others over here, they kill you with, it's got to be at least 6 months, got to be 6 months, no less, and they do that. I feel they look at us differently. They can't empathize with us because they're not us. And I blame prosecutors who are young. Most of them are less than 30 years of age, hadn't experienced much in life. And then they give them the power to be able to punish someone, to give them life, to even give them a death sentence. But they have that being 25, 26, 27 years of age. And all of us are pretty mature that's here I'm 58 years of age, and I was a prosecutor at age 33, so I started out late, and I've had some experiences. But a lot of these young kids, I call them, go to law school, graduate about 24, 25 years of age, and then they get this job, and all they know is school, and that's all they know. School, not really much experiences other than hanging out and partying with their friends, I guess. And so they look at life a little bit different. They look at people that don't look like them. They never entertained with. They've never been around. Don't know anything about the African American experience, and they treat our people, I think, the way maybe their parents treated our people, and they kind of emulate what they've seen and what they've seen others do, and it just, to answer your question, it is different. I argue like crazy. Thanks to Mr. Barlow, he had the program. I've used it several times, whereas I had a case of burglary. They wanted my guy to do like 6 years. They got white males. I showed them like 4 different cases. White males, none of them did a year, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. Yet this black male who's similar situated, they want 6 years. And sometimes it's not just the prosecutors, but it's the judge you're in front of. Some judges are more strict than others, more lenient. And some judges are very hard. If a prosecutor go to him or her and ask for a certain sentence, they might reject it because, after all, the judges is the final authority who will, if they would accept the sentence. So some judges are tough, and therefore a lot of times I feel they put prosecutors in that same division with that judge who are tough. So now you got a tough prosecutor, a tough judge, you got a tough way to go to try to get your client justice, or what we feel is equal justice by looking at what they've done in the past. And the last thing, judges too, and Mr. Barlow has helped young judges. Like, you got judges, although they might be older, 50, 60, but if they've never judged before, I consider them young judges. They haven't seen anything. So with his program, you can show those judges who are brand new, been on the bench maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, they can look at that and see what other judges are doing in the same circuit or even outside the circuit for similar crimes, and therefore might help them be more lenient than they might otherwise have been without having that information in front of them.
Since they're so
To
accustomed
answer
to
your
going,
question, I think race matters. In my experience with the criminal justice system, it matters. Even when I was a prosecutor, I saw it on that side as well. Race matters.
so Attorney Barlow, you mentioned the Florida DACS or whatever that other system that they were accustomed to searching for criminal defense and for information. I forgot what it was called, the system before the ESAW system became available. So are judges and lawyers accepting of your data analysis since they were accustomed to the other system?
Well, there is no other system. The criminal punishment code is the law that basically says, you know, these offenses at this level should receive this number of points. And so when 2 different charges have the same or relatively similar points and people get arrested for those charges, you should go by the points in terms of the sentence for each person, but that's not what happens. So what our system does is it comes in and it audits that system in and of itself to make sure that judges can look at what's being done and what has been done. Let me just explain to you how this got created. I had an African-American male who we lost half of a trial in 2010, and he was facing 15 years on a first offense, date rape type case, where he had sex with his girlfriend's roommate who had been wanting to have sex with him. So these people knew each other, okay? But no one else had ever received, I didn't notice until we got this system, but nobody else had ever received 15 years. So he got 15 years in 2010. We created this system in 2017. The first case I ran was that case. And I just showed it to you on the screen. The 15-year sentence was my client's sentence. Nobody else had received 15 years. And so what we found was the average sentence was 7.9 years. And I was trying to explain to the judge who had only been on the bench for 18 months. I was trying to explain to him, look, Judge, even if they did everything he said, he doesn't deserve 15 years. I've been practicing law, 30 some years. It was 20 some years at that time, but I knew nobody had received a sentence like that, but I had no objective data to show him. So what we did was we created this system, and see what this system does is it's hard to unring a bell. So if you show a judge, for instance, I can show a judge what their average sentences are on cases. So for instance, let's say Dexter has a case and the prosecutor is asking for 15 years. Well, he pulls up this data and it shows the judge that the judge has never sentenced anybody to over 8 years for a case like that, unless the prosecutor can show some extenuating circumstance as to why this particular person should receive 15 years. Guess what? That judge is not going to give them 15 years because he or she will be going against their own average sentences. And so what this system does, it shows you what you're about to do before you do it. You can stubbornly still do it if you want to, but it's very, very difficult for you to do an outlying sentence that nobody else has done, even yourself, once you see that it's done. We have lawyers who use this system. State attorney was trying to get 10 years out of them, but when they use this system, they got 2 years based upon the system. One person was facing 150 years, but when the lawyer applied this system in Tampa, the person received 5 years. So that's how powerful it is.
Wow. Corey, I don't want to take over the whole conversation, but did you have a question for our guests? You're muted.
I did have a question, but when I heard 150 years, I got really sidetracked. Jesus Christ. So, but one question I did want for Attorney Davis is, how does it impact you to have a Caucasian client and to fight and get them a lower sentence, and then you, as you say, fight like hell for a person that looks like you, and the sentencing isn't the same or fair? How does that impact you as an attorney and as a Black person?
As a Black, I got one colleague. He brags about he's never lost a trial with he's a Black male. He's never lost a trial with a white defendant. Every trial he's had with a white defendant, he's won. It appears that the results are easier to get with a white client. In my experience, it's been easier to get with the white client. It sometimes questions my ability, like that I do the same, that I argue the same type arguments. But I sort of look at it as just justice should be blind, and I'm an attorney. And in my opinion, it's not blind all the time. It's just it's getting better, but it's still that stigma that Black is evil, and they look at us a certain way, they treat us a certain way, and that's my experience with the system. I fight like hell in the system, within the system, as best I can do it, but I win a lot of cases. Win could be getting the client probation, getting them 2 years versus 15 years. And then I do lose cases as well. And but I haven't tried any cases with a white defendant, but I've negotiated great results with a white defendant.
So how do you all act though, knowing, I mean, how do the judges, I should say, now I gotta add, and I think it was posted also, how do you deal with the fact that some of these judges may be inexperienced, or that they're being unfair based on certain factors like race and gender? How do you handle that?
Let me try to address that, because you have a full spectrum of behavior. What I mean is that there's what's called implicit bias. We all have it. Everyone has it, believe it or not. And what happens is you have certain stereotypical beliefs that just kind of run like a program in the back of your mind that you're not conscious of. And so what happens a lot of times is people will give certain people the benefit of the doubt automatically, and they will not give somebody else the benefit of the doubt automatically. And so you see that all day, every day. And sometimes judges catch it themselves and the prosecutors. I watched a federal judge one time at a conference in Tampa, and she was talking, and she said they sentenced someone that morning. The prosecutors brought in someone, a white male, and they put all multiple counts in one sentence. But then when an African-American male came to be sentenced after lunch, they put all his counts individually, which means he received 15, 16, 17 multiple felony convictions at once, whereas the white defendant only received one conviction. So, the judge said, Mr. Prosecutor, you didn't handle this case, the other case this morning, which was just like this one. You put all the counts under one paragraph this morning, but I itemized the needs. Why are you treating these cases differently? So sometimes judges catch it with prosecutors, and defense attorneys catch it with prosecutors and judges. But what this system will do is it will smoke that out up front, and it will sometimes, I can see eyes light up when they see what they're getting ready to do. But I want to go back to something Corey asked Dexter for a second, because I got a white client years ago. I stopped actively practicing criminal work in 2016. So I refer cases to Dexter because I know he's competent. And so I got a case one time, a country white man came from rural Nassau County down to Jacksonville to hire me on a criminal case, and he had a Southern drawl in his overalls and everything. We sitting down talking. And I said, man, I got to ask you a question. I said, tell me, why did you come all the way to the urban core of Jacksonville to get an African-American lawyer to represent you up in rural Nassau County? This is what he told me. He said, Mr. Barlow, I was discriminated against because I'm poor. They know I'm poor. We don't believe in banks. We keep our money in the house. We live off the land, and they mistreat me because I'm poor. And he said, I wanted somebody to represent me who knows what it feels like to be discriminated against. I said, brother, you got yourself a lawyer. And so I remember that conversation we had inspired me to work for him just as hard as I was working for my African-American clients, and we got him the deal that he really deserved. But again, like I said before, last week I told you, racism, prejudice, and discrimination is from the cradle to the casket. It's baked in the United States of America system. It's an unwitting system with some people. It's in your face with other people. And we have to be diplomatic about how we deal with it. And what I do is I deal with people based upon, who they are. If you come to me like a racist rascal, I'm going to treat you like a racist rascal, period, point blank. If you come to me, Malcolm X used to say it like this: a wolf, a fox and a wolf are both canine, both belong to the dog family. But you had the wolf in the South, but the fox in the North. And so you deal with them differently. So sometimes you have Southern foxes down here. You have to deal with that person differently, diplomatically. But if you have an in-your-face type person, for instance, I've had judges removed from cases. Judge hollered at my client one day. She told me she's an African-American female. The judge hollered at her. She said, I'm scared of him. I had him removed from the case. He fought me about it. I took it to the chief judge, got him off the case. And so if you come to a client of mine like that, like a wolf, I'm going to treat you like a wolf. If you deal with my client like a fox, I'm going to deal with you like a fox. So that's how I deal with those situations when I come across them.
So in order to assure fairness in the judicial system, when we talk about socioeconomic levels and the fact that people might not be able to afford Attorney Davis, right? What do you do what does someone do right now who's watching and they have a loved one who unfortunately and I like what you said, Attorney Barlow, that you're not asking for people not to be held accountable for the crimes they commit. But when they know that they are fighting a system that is fighting against them and they're not getting equal treatment, who do people go to, or how do they gain the best of the best in order to not have their life, because it might be the breadwinner of the family. And if that person is put away for 15, 20 years, that's going to impact the entire family.
Right. Well, I'll just say it like this. Like when I was doing criminal work, I got people been owing me money since the 80s. I'll never sue the client. Dexter is like I practice. A lot of times we have lower fees and we never get all our money, but we still work like, we got paid $1 million. And so they're going to get, if you get a good lawyer and they give you a good price, you're going to get a good deal. And a lot of times, they cannot afford to pay you all the money, period, point blank. But once you take that case and Dexter tell you, you got to work for it. I'll let Dexter handle it.
Yeah, you got to work for it. And also public defenders, if they can't afford a private attorney, there are a lot of public defenders. They get a bad rap at times, but there are some very good public defenders out there. I think the biggest problem they have is at their caseload. They have so many cases that they can't give a particular case a lot of attention only because of the caseload they might have. But there are public defenders who, if you can't afford a private attorney, that would represent them and do a good job as well.
And let me say this: there are public defenders who use our system. We're trying to offer it to all of them. And the good thing about when a public defender uses our system, let's say, for instance, Dexter gets some great deals. Well, once they get in the system, those attorneys can use those deals that Dexter got to get for their clients and vice versa. You have certain high-powered lawyers in Jackson, in every city, really. They get better deals than just about anybody else. Once those deals get filed away into the system, our system can pull it up, and then they can use that same high-powered lawyer's deal to get a good deal for their client. So we're trying to get public defenders, all of them. It's 20 elected public defenders around the state of Florida, 20 elected state attorneys. Now, there's one district circuit that's doing something very unusual. I'm not at liberty to say which one it is, but the prosecutor and the public defender have come together and they're trying to get funding to use this system so that they will definitely, the state attorney will offer equitable offers, and then the public defender can negotiate equitable offers based upon the same data. And so we're going to pilot that system if they can get funding. And if it works out well, which it should, it could be a model for the rest of the state and possibly the nation.
Is that your ultimate goal, Attorney Barlow? Is that the state attorney's office and the private attorney or public defender work together to come together on a consensus of what a fair sentence could be?
That's exactly correct, as well as ROCC attorneys, regional conflict counsel attorneys. That's exactly correct. Because see, in the way the system is right now, you can be in one courtroom. Let's say there are 5 prosecutors. 3 prosecutors can offer 3 different defendants with 3 different lawyers, 3 different offers on the same charge. Let's say it's possession of cocaine, and the minimum is 12 months, the maximum 18 months. One prosecutor can offer 18 months to one person. Another prosecutor can also offer 12 months to another person. Another prosecutor can offer probation. That's 3 different offers from the same office in the same courtroom. That is crazy. Whereas when you have a system like ours, the prosecutors can look at what the average sentences are, and they can offer the average sentence, and the public defender can show their clients that these are average sentences that other people have gotten, and it will help them resolve the cases so much quicker.
Will this process be more difficult if you went and did a complete trial and then a defendant was found guilty?
No, as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought up trials, because I tell attorneys, and they don't like to hear this, but I tell them, I said, listen, if you have this system and you lose a trial, but you don't use it to try to facilitate an equitable sentence for your client, you have committed malpractice. If you have the system and you don't, it's no reason to not. If you lost a trial, your client, if you lost a felony trial, 9 times out of 10, your client is going to go to state prison. If it's a 3rd degree felony, it's up to 5 years. If it's a 2nd degree felony, it's up to 15 years. If it's a 1st degree felony, that's up to life. And if it's a capital case, that's death. So we don't work with death cases, but any with 5, 15 to life. If your client is facing 5, 15 to life, you have this system, you need to use it, because if you don't and your client gets sentenced, let's say to 10 years, but the average is 5, you've committed malpractice unwittingly just by not using the system.
Is this also available for civil cases or just criminal cases?
No, this is just criminal sentencing, not civil. penalty.
Gotcha.
And,
There
and
was a question, I'm sorry, there was a question I want to make sure I read it. Someone posted, as a physician, I tend to try and stay away from my patient's financial status to help limit my implicit bias as it relates to one's financial status. How do you, as an attorney, deal with clients that require more time and effort, but are less financially able to sustain your services?
Yeah, what I typically do, I practiced criminal defense work for 20 years, from 1986 to 2016. So I don't do it anymore, but I facilitate other lawyers doing it, like Dexter with this program. So I got the best of both worlds. It's like I'm a professor or a coach or whatever. I get to help other people do it, but I don't have to go and get my hands dirty anymore. But when I did, this is how I practice law. I treated people like I would want to be treated, period, point blank. And like I said, people been owing me money since 1986. I've never sued a client. I knew some of them just fell on hard times. Some of them didn't fall on hard times. They just didn't pay. You know, got them out of prison, got them out of jail, got them out of trouble. They just didn't pay. But what I found was that it always balanced itself out. Let me give you a classic example. I went to trial on the guy's case, worked on it 6 months. The trial lasted a week. He was found not guilty, charged him 10 grand. They might have paid me 7. I never got the other, money. Well, I pick up another case after that. A guy's charged with having sex with his minor daughter, statutory rape charges and everything. I charged this guy 10 grand. I learned my lessons from the last case. I said, okay, you got to pay everything up front. He goes into his 401k. He gets 10 grand out of his 401k. I'm thinking I got to go through 6 months like I did before. This case settled in 2 weeks, period, point blank. So it balances itself out, so I don't have to worry about that. But my concern when I was doing it was trying to represent people like I would want to be represented. So I never had a problem with it from that perspective.
So if someone's listening, and by the way, if anyone has a question of Attorney Barlow, you can call in 1-888-669-1280. Again, 888-669-1280. You'll see that our behind the scenes guy, Tyrone, is adding all of this extra technology to the way we operate. But this has been very, very informative information. But I know, and Corey can tell you, since doing the line of work that he does, that there are a lot of families out there who could use this. How do people find out about it? How do they learn that this system exists?
Well, I asked Tyrone to put up the website. The best thing to do is go to our website, which is technologiesforjustice.com. And it's a wealth of information on there. And you can contact me at 855-845-3727, 855-845-3727, toll-free number. And I get letters from inmates in jail saying, look, I got a cellmate. We have the same charge. He's doing 20. I'm doing 20 years. He's doing 5 years, So they want to know the data. So their family members will, contact me, and they'll pay for the data, and I'll send it to the family member and the prisoner. And so I'm very, accessible from that perspective. Like homelessness last week, this is a calling. This has just been, I've been in the criminal defense work, since I did an internship in the state attorney office in 1985 and switched to the PD's office because I like defending more. It's harder to defend somebody. You have to get all your creative juices together. You have to be tenacious. You have to be dogmatic, and sometimes you can just outwit and outfox a prosecutor. And so when you win a case as a defense attorney, you've done something, because they're much harder to win.
Is it possible that this tool can be made possible for everyone in the future, even outside the state of Florida?
Yes, we're working on that now. We're trying to get a federal court application. There are over 1,000 federal courthouses around the country. And so we're trying to get a federal application going. I'll already have a federal judge who's willing to pilot the program if it could, once we get the data going. But it's difficult to get the data that we need from the U.S. Sentencing Commission. They're very guarded on their data from the judges and everything, because they're trying to protect the judges. They fear that, if they give this data away, we might let it get out to other people, and then they will want to, kill the judges or whatever who sentence these people these certain ways or whatever. So ultimately, it's going to get out. Ultimately, it's going to be national. But right now, it's statewide from Pensacola to Key West in Florida. Florida is the only state, by the way, who has a system like this. I'm the only expert in the United States of America, to my knowledge, who is a sentencing equity expert. There are many sentencing experts in terms of mitigation to keep a person from getting the death penalty. But I know I'm the only expert in Florida with respect to sentencing equity, and I believe that I'm the only one in the United States of America, because the only way you can really be one is to have a system like this. And to my knowledge, we're the only company that has one. I've gotten calls from New York, Washington State prosecutors calling me, asking me about this system. So it's ultimately going to be across the whole entirety of the United States of America. It's just a matter of time.
Somebody says, can it be like Carfax, started only for a dealer and now it's available for normal laypersons to access?
Well, I'm very precautious about that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you're talking about some very, very intimate information on people that can be weaponized. Let me give you an example. We have a provision in our service agreement that says you cannot use this data for political purposes. So you could take this data and massage it and use it to get rid of somebody or elect somebody. I had a call. There's a person who got elected a prosecutor now. When this person was running for office, somebody called me up and they were asking me some weird questions about it. I was like, why are you asking me these questions? These are some very unusual. Then they got fessed up. He said, we want to use it for political purposes. I said, no, we won't let you use it for political purposes. Well, that person won, but what they wanted to do was use it against a judge who was running against that person to become state attorney. Well, if I let somebody use this for political purposes, okay, the system itself will shut it down. Judges will call for the legislature to shut it down, the governor to shut it down. It will be shut down. So we will not allow it to be used for political purposes. It was created to get people equitable sentences, and that's how we're going to make sure that it's only used for that purpose. So I'm only Florida bar members can operate the system, because we want to hold people accountable and not use it for political purposes. If we find that someone purchased a subscription and they're using it for political purposes, in the contract it says your services will be terminated when we find that out. So I will not allow a lay person to use it, because I don't trust lay people, because some of them their ethical standards are not up to par with attorneys. I'm just being honest with you. So that's why we don't let lay persons use the data. Now you can pay for it. We'll send it to you. And once we give it to you, you can do whatever you want to with it, but we won't let you operate to mine the data out.
I have a question. I guess not a question, but would it be a concern for you? I think that this program is awesome. And I think Jocelyn talked about letting it go nationwide, and you mentioned even in the federal courts. Is there a concern that once it becomes more and more popular, that sentencing could get higher before it takes over a certain region, which would patent numbers? No. As a matter of fact, I have one public defender who doesn't want to use it because he thinks that offers are going to get higher. But I told him, you're just scared. You're just too afraid to use it, period, point blank. He didn't like that, but that's the reality of it. Here's the reality of what we find. When you use it, the offers go down, because like I showed you, one person is getting 6 months in jail, another person is getting 15 years in prison. There's no explanation for that. You cannot justify that at all. One is either too high, one is too low. Both are correct. The median is in the middle. That's where the average sentences are. So no, what I see is offers going down, 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 down. I say that because I think it's a great program for Florida to even use it. Exactly. It speaks for itself. Exactly. In South and in Florida to use it, and I hope that it gets to the federal court level. I hope that the entire nation adopt this program, because it makes sentencing fair for everyone. And one thing you said at the beginning was racism is a wealth class. If you're poor, whether
right.
you're black or white, Hispanic, you're gonna get that poor treatment. So
That's
I
right.
applaud the work that you're doing. This is amazing.
Thank you. There's a question that says, if you are a Florida resident, can you use it in another state? The answer is no. See, in order for this system to be used, the state has to have a codified system of sentencing. Most of them are called guidelines. Florida is so different. Florida has what's called a criminal punishment code. Florida had guidelines, but they went to the criminal punishment code. So any state that has either a criminal punishment code, which Florida is the only one who has that, most other states have what's called guidelines. If you have a sentencing guideline, which Georgia doesn't have, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say a person is charged with a 15-year offense. So the maximum they can get is 15 years. Well, on paper. But if you have a guideline system, the guidelines might say, well, even though the maximum is 15 years, the actual maximum under the guidelines can only be 10 years. But some states like Georgia doesn't have that. So if you're facing life in Georgia, you're facing life. If you're facing 15 years, you're facing 15 years. So if a state has a guideline system, this program can be applied to that data and then it can be used.
Wow, this has been a lot. One last question for me. Do you know of anyone who needed to use this for a minor offender?
Yes. Matter of fact, I'm glad you asked that question. The very first, well, I'll say it like this. If a minor is charged as an adult, okay, this system will come into play. But as long as they're under juvenile sanctions, this doesn't come into play because this is for felony sentences only from the felony system. However, the first time it was used, it was a young man who was about to turn 21. And so he was eligible for a youthful offender sentence. He was facing 10 years. He was facing 10 to 150 years in prison because he had 5 counts that were 15 years apiece. So it's a minimum of 10, a maximum of 150 years. But the data was used by his very shrewd criminal defense attorney, who was a public defender in another city, She was able to get him 2 years in the youth camp, 2 years community control, which is home detention, then 2 years probation. And that was off of a maximum of 150 years in prison. And that's what this system did for him. So he wasn't a minor, but he was able to get a youthful offender sentence because he was under 21 when he was arrested and when he was sentenced.
Wow, I tell you, this has been this has been an eye opener. And if you did not get that website, it's technologiesforjustice.com, right?
Yeah.
And Attorney Barlow gave his toll-free number of 855-845-3727. Again,
Yes.
855-845-3727.
It's option
will
1,
certainly-
extension 1. Hit extension 1, that comes directly to me.
Extension 1, and this is very, very insightful. I have to admit, Attorney Barlow, when you first started, I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to understand what to ask? I'm a health educator. But I tell you what, you really broke it down. And one of the things that we all know, all of us have somebody that we know who unfortunately found themselves as a part of the judicial system. So to have access of the ESA system, which is Equity in Sentencing Analysis, I didn't get the S. What's the
system?
So the Equity in Sentencing Analysis System, or ESAS. At the end of every show, as you know, Attorney Barlow, we have reached the end of the show. Don't want to keep you the whole night. We like to give our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts. What are your final thoughts for tonight's topic?
My final thoughts are that I really hope and pray that people will not only access the system, okay, but demand that it be used in the system. Because sometimes politics has to come into play for a system like this. This system has been around since 2018, but a lot of people don't even know about it. The Florida Bar actually was fighting against it originally until I made a presentation, and then they formally adopted it, which shocked me. And they required that we offered to prosecutors as well, because initially it wasn't even offered to prosecutors, but because they made an endorsement, they said, we want prosecutors to have it too, so we opened it up. So here's my final thought on the whole show. We need equitable sentencing for everybody, men, women, African Americans, white. Like I said, I run into a lot of sentences of poor white people that look just like some of the sentences of poor and middle-class African Americans. So I have to look out for everybody and be, one of the things I try to be in providing equitable sentences is being equitable to everybody in the process.
That's when you put on your pastoral hat, Pastor. Not to say that you were an unethical attorney, but I know you're balancing being a pastor as well as an attorney, and I truly admire your passion. But I'll say my final thoughts. Pastor Corey O'Neill, we forgot to acknowledge that you are also a pastor. What are your final thoughts for tonight's discussion?
I want to thank Attorney Barlow and Attorney Davis for the opportunity to pick their brains. But Attorney Barlow, thank you so much for this wealth of information. Like you said, not just for the African American community, but for anyone that's underprivileged, underserved. This is something I knew nothing about. And I think we're going to leave enlightened, we're going to leave more educated, and we're going to leave empowered tonight, knowing that we can be treated fairly. I mean, I learned a whole lot tonight, and it is my prayer that this system is adopted nationwide, and it's also a part of our federal court system, because it's a fair and just system. And I'm going to leave with these words. I say this: I believe in justice. I just don't believe in just us. And I believe that this program would make it just this and not just us.
Wow, thank you. Again, Attorney Barlow, you enlightened us tonight. You enlightened us last week. I admire your passion for all people in assuring equity in so many different facets of our lives. I asked the question of Attorney Barlow last week, and he answered the call. And that is there any topic that you would like to recommend that we should talk about? And he actually recommended this amongst other topics. And once I started listening, and he sent some links for me to read and listen to or watch, and I just had to get him back on. So thank you again for your time, your expertise, your passion. And I like what you said, that you're not here to create a system for someone to get off who has committed a crime. If you committed a crime, you need to pay for whatever, pay the whatever, however that thing goes. But you just want to make sure that as sentencing goes, that it is equitable. Thank you to Corey, our co-host for tonight. We look forward to having you back on the show, because unfortunately, when it comes to gang crimes, those still exist. So maybe we'll have you and Attorney Barlow on one night to have a discussion about that. Not sure if that's in his purview of discussion, but I'm sure he can enlighten us on that. To our listeners, thank you as always for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. And if you did not get the information, make sure you go on technologiesforjustice.com and check them out, because at some point, unfortunately, you may find your loved one who are in need of the judicial system, or part of, or need an attorney, and you will want your attorney to access this information, access the equity and sentencing analysis system. Thank you again, and join us next week for Pause for the Truth, where we can tell you what's really going on. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.